Hey everybody, back again for another video. My name's Cody, this is my wife Jillian. So we're going to talk about weeks 3 to 6. So if you missed the other videos previously, we talked about the first 48 hours in the hospital, the first 2 weeks of the baby's life, and now we're going to cover the weeks 3 to 6. The first and kind of biggest thing to highlight here is usually around the second or third week, your child will experience their first growth spurt. And the reason why that's important is because your child typically will kind of change demeanors. Now, it's temporary. So, for example, all 3 of our kids have had very similar growth spurts, I would say.
Right around 10 days or so.
Yeah, 10 days up to even 3 weeks. And what happens is they can be a little more fussy, they can be a little bit more clingy, uncomfortable, hungry. And I remember with Quinn, I don't know if you remember it too, but I remember with Quinn when this happened, we were like, oh my gosh, what's happening? Our baby's
she
like
digress.
She was regressing. So it was like we, had her on this schedule and she was getting into a good rhythm, and all of a sudden stuff hits the fan, and
we didn't really learn about growth spurts.
Yeah, so we're like, oh my gosh, she's never gonna be the same, and it lasts.
It's honestly maybe 2 days,
3 days,
very temporary.
But it's very helpful to know, because when we knew with our son Madden, and then now with Collins, which is our newest, you're way more prepared. You're like, okay, this is probably a growth spurt. This is why things have changed a little bit, and then you kind of can see the light at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah.
So it's important to know. That's the first of probably 4 major growth spurts.
Yeah,
I think.
And that first, I would say 6 months or so, they'll have a few, and we'll touch on those. But that was the first one we wanted to mention, because you'll also be adjusting their schedule / now is when you'll kind of start implementing more of a schedule. In the 2-week video we did mention, you're still playing it very loose, schedule and structure-wise. You're not going to be super strict about anything. Those few weeks are really more about just nourishing you and the baby. But again, that's in that video.
We'll talk about kind of more of the schedule kind of towards the end of this video. The second thing we wanted to highlight was kind of the next big thing that happens in this window is your baby ideally will start to transition out of your room. Do you want to?
Yes. So for all 3 of our kiddos, we use a bassinet that stays in our bedroom for the first 4 weeks, and he or she will sleep in that bassinet pretty much regularly.
All naps, everything.
Yeah, naps, overnight, all of it.
The great thing about, I'll just do a little plug. The great thing about this bassinet is it's on a.
They're portable.
Yeah, they're portable. So right now with Collins, she's kind of transitioning out of the bassinet.
She's literally in our bathroom right now.
She is. Hopefully she sleeps. But we've just kind of wheeled her out towards the living room,
family room,
and we have
so
the fireplace, and we have the fireplace out there, so she can sleep out there, and it's just more portable, which is nice. But that changes.
Yeah, bassinets. I mean, there's so many options with all baby things these days. So that's just what we do. We love that you can move her anywhere we are, and with the other kids, they want to be around her. But right around 4 weeks is when we start to introduce her or our baby to their crib. We like to have a nursery set up, or even just an area, whatever that looks like in your home, with a crib. So it may sound silly, but the baby kind of takes a little while to adjust to sleeping in a crib. With all of this, I also want to mention, whenever we put our babies down for naps or overnight, we swaddle them. Now with Quinn and Madden, our first 2, we just use swaddles. With that, I highly recommend anything that's got a little stretch to it. You're able to get it nice and tight. There are so many techniques when it comes to wrapping a baby. Who knew? Honestly, I would just do your research and see what works well for your baby. Every baby is different. Techniques, whatever. Now Collins, our third and most recent, we actually used a sleep sack for the first time. I've heard about them, never really got into it. But our hospital actually gave us one, so we said, why not? and it's been awesome.
It's been great.
So with that,
Why has it
whether you swaddle, whether you sleep sack, the whole point is to keep them nice and tight, make them feel like they're still in the womb. That comfort helps them sleep. Babies have, and we learned this with our daughter Quinn, they have, I forget the actual term, but like a falling reaction. What am I thinking of? Anyway, it feels like they're falling, and so
they do like this like flailing kind of thing a lot, actually.
It basically can scare them awake. Or anytime, even like now, like if our kiddos get out of their swaddle, which they do, they'll like scratch themselves. They'll just wake themselves up. So it's really nice to have them confined in some way. It keeps them nice and comfy and secure. So, side note. But getting them used to their crib. So yes, we still keep them swaddled so they still feel nice and comfy. But just being in a larger space, it's adjusting. They're always learning. So 4 weeks is about when we do that. And we try to do that for their naps.
Start with the naps.
Yeah, start with their naps and see how they do. Our daughter Quinn was a horrible napper, so she took a little while to adjust to her crib.
Just think about it. The crib's big and open.
Just a lot of space.
A lot of space. We know some friends that use those, what are they called?
There's like the Dakatat kind of thing.
Yeah, where basically you like put your baby kind of in like a little confined space within the crib to make them feel like, more cozy.
Yeah, which don't take our word on that, because I have heard some.
Yeah, we never used it.
Maybe you don't do that.
We never used it, but we know people that have. But it's important to get your baby out of your room, because honestly, those first few weeks, and you can be the heaviest of sleepers or the lightest of sleepers. The reality is, you or your partner or both of you are going to wake up throughout the night, even if it's just for a few minutes or a few seconds, because your baby's just going to make noises. And it doesn't mean that your baby's, in trouble or something's up, but you're just going to hear that. And so, eventually, obviously the baby's going to be sleeping independently, and you want to be able to introduce that, as somewhat early as possible. I mean, you need them to be in your room for a few weeks, ideally. And then we've really enjoyed starting with the naps and kind of transitioning them that way, and maybe they'll still sleep in our room for a few nights, like overnight, because reality is, if depending on your house and the layout and that kind of thing, it can be tough to go upstairs in the middle of the night to do the feeding and that kind of thing. So maybe start with the kind of naps and see how it goes, and slowly kind of get that transition building.
And the longer they can stretch overnight, again, the easier that will be. The whole point for us of having the bassinet in the room is getting to sleep. What the hell?
I tried to hold my sneeze. That did not work. I apologize.
Okay. Oh. The whole point of the bassinet in our room is because you're nursing so often. I'm not going to get up and go to the nursery every 2 hours, especially in the middle of the night. I am one of the heaviest sleepers in the world. It's not going to happen because I won't do it. So anyway, do what works for your family. Again, in all of these videos, this is just our experience. Hopefully it helps somebody. So with the crib, what else was I going to say about the crib?
Just a plug. We have the simple IKEA cribs, which have been great.
Oh yeah, because they transition.
From all the stages. So you just take the front kind of part of the crib off, and that turns into their bigger bed when they're a little bit older and that kind of thing.
Yeah. Sorry, one more thing I wanted to mention about the whole crib, bassinet, in the room thing. So yes, your baby is gonna make noises all the time. Very rarely does it mean that something is wrong. Now, in the first few weeks, and even through 3 to 6 weeks, if they wake up, which they very well probably will, we try to allow about 10 minutes, especially, we'll extend it as they grow, but like in these first few weeks, about 10 minutes to see if they can or will work it out. Mm-hmm. Now, again, use your best judgment as the parents. If it's a funny sounding cry, like, something may not be okay, please check.
In case you didn't know, which I'm speaking to myself because I did not know, babies have different cries, and you will learn those.
You really will.
You will learn if it's just
a
tired cry. You'll learn if it's a hungry cry. You'll learn if it's just an uncomfortable. You'll learn there are different cries. So you as the parents.
If you ever have a suspicion or question, go check. So also in that, something super helpful to have is a baby monitor. We love any kind. We love Wise. Just put that out there.
WYZE.
Yes.
We've tried everything, honestly.
We've tried a lot.
We've even tried a really non-baby monitor, the Nest, which was good. The Nest was great. I had no complaints. The only thing was it's $250 for the camera. And that can just be a really tough pill to swallow, especially, you have hospital bills and these other things.
Or if you have multiple kids.
Yeah,
you don't really want to put that in both rooms.
But Wise is incredibly affordable. Their camera, which is very high def, really nice, which is not something you can say for other cameras. It's $20 on Amazon.
So we just recommend a really good camera. Don't even worry, honestly, about baby monitors. I'm not sure why, if they've missed the memo. They're just not great quality. Like the
handheld monitors.
Photo.
We've tried a handful of different handheld monitors. And
anyway, a little bit of a rabbit trail. But Wise has a great app. A lot of cameras do now, so you don't have to have a monitor if you don't want one. Anyway, anything that provides you a video, and that way if you do have a concern, you hear them crying, you can just check. I know when we were babies, our parents just had it was like a little walkie-talkie thingy, which is great. You can hear what's happening, but sometimes just to give yourself a little comfort.
Especially if you're going to let your baby cry it out, it's much nicer to see it on video and make sure that everything's okay while they're crying it out.
Even though I'm awake and the baby is crying, I have that comfort. Like, okay, everything's okay. He or she maybe had gas, maybe has the dirty diaper. Like, who knows? So again, about 10 minutes, let them try to work it out. If they don't, go check. They're still learning in this whole process. So again, it could be a diaper. Double check. They may have spit up. They might need a passy. Who knows? There's so many things.
The goal is for your baby to get to a point where they're self-soothing.
Right.
When they go to sleep.
You want to get them to be independent as quickly as possible.
So let's pivot to schedule.
Sorry. The only other note about the whole bassinet grip thing and sleeping in your room. There have been studies that show the longer the baby sleeps in your room and really close to mom, this is wild to me, but they can literally sense your milk and smell it.
It's crazy.
It's so wild. It's beautiful, the babies. But obviously, if they're close and they know they have access, they're more likely to wake up and want to eat. So that distance is good for everybody. Continue.
So let's talk through schedule. What does a schedule look like? So after the growth spurt, you typically, our daughter's watching Cat in the Hat. After that first growth spurt, you typically have what's called a kind of like a transition or a merge feeding. Before this, as far as our schedule goes, before that first merge, we're feeding 9 times a day, roughly every 2 hours, 2.5 hours is what the math works out to. And that's including 2 overnight feedings. We've typically done it around 2 and 5 to start. After that first transition or growth spurt, you're transitioning feedings, the baby can stretch a little bit longer throughout the night. And so, what happens is you can typically drop a feeding overnight. Now, that doesn't mean that your baby's going to get less nourishment because you're just feeding more frequently during the day, letting the baby sleep a little bit longer at night. And the baby's still getting a lot of nutrients, a lot of
getting what they
milk.
Need.
Yeah, they're getting exactly what they need. So when that happens, for us, what we've typically done is merge that 2 and 5 feeding to a 3 a.m. So then kind of the bookend feedings that we've done is 11, 3, and then 6:30 or 7.
Yeah. Sorry, one note I just want to say about schedules and the structure is we've kind of found that there's this myth about structure is so rigid and blah, blah, blah. we've actually found it to be really sweet for our family because we can manipulate the schedule to work with our family. For example, our other kiddos normally get up between 6:30 and 7 on a great day, like 7:30. But we're able to dictate when Collins has her first morning feeding, how that works within our family schedule. You have control over your baby's day, so schedule it out, whatever works best for you. And again, with the windows of 2.5 to 3 hours, and that'll extend, reschedule each merge if you need, and just make it work within your schedule.
And in all honesty, I don't know if some of you have watched a previous video, but we had kind of a funny moment with Madden. The first 2 weeks, we kind of forgot that we wanted to start to get him on a schedule.
My fault.
And so we didn't give him a schedule for the first 2 weeks. And personalities aside, it was horrible for us.
Hard.
For us, it was horrible because you don't know when they're going to wake up to eat. You don't know when they're going to sleep, and you're not dictating things as a parent, which in our kind of experience is what you should be doing, right? The baby doesn't necessarily know when they should eat or they should sleep. They don't even really know in the first few weeks what's day and what's night. So it just created a lot of ambiguity and just like, oh no, when's the baby gonna feed next?
Yeah.
And so it's hard to plan anything when you just don't know. Now, is it nice when you get like these stretches of time? Sure, but that's just in the short term. We were kind of looking at it as
to bite
like,
you in the butt.
yeah, we were kind of looking at it as, okay, what do we want to set ourselves up for the long term? And the long term is this. We've gotten all 3 kids to sleep through the night at 10 weeks or less, consistently, like every night. You know, you might have a night here or there where they wake up or fuss, whatever. Consistently through the night, all of them have slept in 10 weeks or less. And that has been so life-giving for
our
us
whole family
to be able to have that sleep, but also have the flexibility during the day.
Yeah. So a little side note on that too is obviously, again, your baby's going to be so sleepy for the first several weeks. It's going to be super tempting. Like, why would I wake a sleeping baby? They're sleeping. I could be doing something. I could be sleeping myself. This is one of those things. Yeah. This is one of those things where I always think, like, what is going to bless my future self? And that's going to be sleeping through the night. And so as hard as it is, and I want to say, it's not easy to wake up at 3 a.m. We have to set multiple alarms. He has to wake me from the dead to get me up.
I think legitimately with Colin, since we've had 2 previously, I think we've set like 5 alarms, like 5 minutes apart, because we just know
So it
ourselves.
is hard. We just have found that it's been worth it. And so making that effort to keep them on that schedule, to extend them, to get them to sleep through the night, is going to be so worth it. Even if it takes, and please know, like, it may take time. Again, every baby is different. Some may, adapt right away, and some it may take a little while, and that is fine, and that's good. I just think making that effort as early as possible is going to really, totally.
The other thing to quickly mention, we're kind of running out of time here. The other thing to mention is with the sleeping schedule, we like to, and we mentioned in our last video, we like to implement the sleep, eat, wake kind of cycle. So what that means is the baby's sleep is most kind of important, and that's kind of the first thing. Or
it honestly doesn't matter what comes first. It's just keeping that.
Don't mind me.
Sorry.
The important thing
pattern.
the important thing is really eating. But what works and has worked for us is focus on your baby getting a full feeding.
Yeah.
And that'll help them get to sleep. But after that feeding, you want to, in these first few weeks, now the first 2 weeks you probably won't, maybe even 3 or 4, but once you get like weeks 3, 4, 5, 6, you'll start to notice the baby's not going to go down right away, and that's great because you want them to have some wake time, because wake time equals energy exerted, which means they're going to be more tired for their nap.
Yeah.
So if you just, for example, if you just feed them, then put them right back down, once they get to those, later weeks, later stages, they're not going to go down immediately. So what you want to have, I would say in the first, the week 3 to 6, which is obviously what we're talking about, you can expect probably like 15, maybe 20 minutes of wake time,
It's
which is
not
a
much.
lot of time to them.
Yeah.
Up to maybe 30 minutes, depending on your baby.
And that's probably closer to 6 weeks.
Yeah. But it's crucial because it gets them exerting energy and becoming alert and kind of, fine-tuning those motor skills. But then once they go down for a nap, they are exhausted. Seriously,
Yeah.
15, 20 minutes, it is a game changer. And that helps them sleep better. Obviously, it gives them a good stretch.
You get to actually spend time with them.
And then you wake up, and feed them and kind of lather, rinse, repeat, if you will. So.
Yeah, because there's going to be a lot of temptation because in those first 2 weeks, I mean, they're literally eating and sleeping and that's it. So as the weeks go on, there is going to be that temptation. Again, you're like, oh, please sleep, give me a break. Because most likely, especially if you're breastfeeding, they're going to pass out after they eat, or that's going to be their natural inclination. I would really encourage you to make the effort to keep them awake. Now, if they close their eyes, okay, fine. But burp them, change their diaper, make sure they're getting stimulated to have some wake time. Because one, you want to try to avoid them associating like eating with sleeping. That's great for the nighttime, and that's likely to happen that last feeding of the day, whether it's 10, 11, whatever. They're going to eat and go right back to sleep because they're tired. They're learning this is what happens at night. But during the day, to go from eating to sleeping, there's a lot of confusion there.
They start to need a little bit more than...
Yeah, and so, again, it's good. They've eaten, they have their energy, let them exert that energy, and then sleep. And then you can go to wake them up, and then that's when they eat. And you just create this really... It's kind of cool to see, honestly, because your child is just like learning and adjusting, and they're weeks old. It's really wild. So I think the last thing I just want to like reiterate, which I think I've said in all of these videos, but I want it to get across, is again, there's so much comfort and peace of mind, especially as a first-time parent. I cannot stress in these simple rhythms and schedule structure, call it what you want. Especially as a first-time parent, it is so comforting to know what my baby needs. Now, there are going to be times when, like, they're crying, and it's like, wow, what do I do? It could be a growth spurt, it could be gas, it could be something. But to know that my baby is fully fed, okay, I know you're not hungry, so what else is it? It removes these doubts and these questions, which for me, very type A, causes a lot of stress. This is almost like a handbook for babies, which does not exist because they're all different, but it just gives a lot of peace of mind with your baby. And
so to recap, growth spurt 1 typically happens around this time. You'll also drop a feeding and kind of adjust your schedule during this time, and potentially go down to 1 overnight feeding, which is life-changing in and of itself. Also important is kind of the transition from bassinet, or basically any type of sleeping arrangement in your room, to starting to slowly, get your baby into a crib or whatever, sleeping arrangement you have outside of your room. And then the other thing to remember is swaddles. So swaddles are crucial, helpful for babies. They've helped all of our babies sleep. So next time, the next video, we've got a big subject to talk about, so I don't want to tease it out too much, but stay tuned. See ya.
Bye.